Welcome to the Ex Good Girl podcast, the place where people pleasers, perfectionists, and overgivers come to unlearn the good girl rules that you thought were making you good, but now you can see are actually just keeping you small. If you've spent your life being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs and feelings above your own, constantly seeking external approval, or avoiding conflict to make others feel comfortable, if guilt and resentment feel like a constant weight in your life, it is time to learn to knock that shit off. Every episode, we dive into the stories, skills, and strategies that you need to stop shrinking, start speaking up, and to live a life that is authentically and unapologetically yours, while also deepening the connection and vulnerability in the relationships that matter to you. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. Julie, I really appreciate you being here for this discussion. It is something that I've been looking forward to, as well as work that I am doing personally. And so I want you to introduce yourself because I've got some questions I want to jump right in. So
let's do it.
What do you want people to know about you?
I'm here, I always tell people I'm like a financial planner, but yet almost like a soul coach in drag as a financial planner. And why? Because so many of us are not living the life that we want to live because we've pigeonholed ourselves into a lifestyle. And financially, we like on some level where we're at. And this is just about finding your freedom and finding what's true for you. And most of the time, our money situation is what jams us up from not doing so. And
that's so true.
I grew up with no money. I have 11 brothers and sisters. I figured out how not only to attract it to become income affluent, but then have also figured out how to hold money in abundance and become asset affluent. And I think that's like the American dream. And many people aspire to that. And we have a lot of people who are income affluent, but have yet to actually be asset affluent. And it's because of our debt structures. So we could dive into many of those different categories, right?
Yes, I want to. And what I want to make sure that I understood something that you just said, because if so, I have a question about it. You said sometimes we get at a place where we are comfortable, like financially, there's something about liking where we're at. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Well, we've all created a lifestyle for ourselves, whether, and we're used to it. We're like, okay, I've raised the bar, I've gotten the raises, I've built the business, I've done what I want to do, and I'm here and I'm rocking and rolling. And all of a sudden you go, I don't feel very free. I don't feel like I have choice. I feel like I'm stuck on some level. People have these aha moments, and it's because we've pigeonholed ourselves into a lifestyle, and you feel like you have to keep doing it every day to make sure that you maintain it. And for some reason, we're not very open to pivoting that it could be completely different, even if you're a grown adult in your 50s. But we can always choose to go to the next adventure, or whatever that is, because at the end of the day, it's about creating experiences that makes you happy and not pigeonhole yourself into lifestyles that make you crappier, which make you develop disease in your body, which then you spend all the money that you've made on your health. And that's never good either.
Yeah. When I look at that, one of the reasons that I see for the existence of that particular dynamic that you just named is there is a certain type of stress that we are used to.
Oh, yeah. That cortisol shooting through our system that we're addicted to.
Right. We're just very comfortable at different income levels with a certain amount of insecurity and scarcity and hustle. And it's just like it's the discomfort that we are used to, and we are not used to the discomfort of, like you said, pivoting and going on to a different adventure.
Exactly.
So when you talk about the emotion behind money or the relationship that people have to their money and to their assets, is that what we're talking about here, or is it something different?
No, I mean, that is what we're talking about. I find that as people amass their wealth or their careers or their lifestyles, they actually become more afraid of losing the wealth, of not maintaining it, showing up the way everyone else wants you to show up in the world, or how you've been expected to show up in the world as a provider or whatever. And it's the fact that, but you have this inner calling that's screaming for something else. And you don't have to wait for your midlife crisis for that to occur. We get tell signs along the way going, pivot another way, go another way. And it actually, that pressure cooker keeps building until we actually do pivot in our lives, because we as human beings tend to attract crises to ourselves, whether it's a financial crisis, a health crisis, a mental crisis, emotional crisis, whatever that is, to actually then choose to pivot, because we get slammed into a corner going, now you've got to change because of X, Y, and Z. But we don't have to get to that point to crisis to actually shift, because there are signs all along the way that you're wanting to pivot. But we choose not to, because I think we're just comfortable on some level where we're at and a little bit more afraid of the unknown as we get older.
It's so interesting because I think that there are women listening to this podcast, and men listen too. Hi, guys. And they would tell you that they know how to pivot, right? They have pivoted in terms of their schedule or their food or their exercise plan, the way they dress, the way, like, and I'm thinking of myself and pivots I've made. Is there something in particular about a financial pivot that we look at differently than some of those other pivots that people make maybe more easily?
Yeah, I think financial pivots, I mean, money makes the world go round, right? And so, especially if you're also responsible for other people, whether it's your kids, your parents, your spouse, you'll pivot more when it's just yourself. I mean, I think back when I tried to embody my younger self when I started my business at 22 years old, I'm like, I jumped off cliffs all the time. But now that I provide alimony and for my 4 kids, as well as my new relationship and his 2 kids, like, that's a lot of responsibility, plus my aging parents, right? So jumping off ledges as you create your life and you're a little bit more solid in the life that you've created, I do believe financially that's a little bit more challenging for people, because they want to at least maintain status quo and not upset the apple cart. But yet the apple cart can always be tipped over. Like, it really can't. Life can always tip over the apple cart, right? And so financially speaking, it's about, really, when I'm talking to people, it's that it's okay that you're on the bridge in your pivoting process, but it's also about how strong is your financial foundation and how much is that financial foundation in place to insulate you from how things can happen at the world at large economically. Right? So most people today don't have enough insulation in their savings accounts or bond accounts to actually get them to, if a crisis occurs, to transition them over a 12 to 18 month window. Most people do not have that. And I think that's a big reason why most people don't pivot, because maybe they've got a bunch of money set up for retirement. They're working on their kids' college, and but in their savings account, they've got a month and they touch it all the time for their vacation spending. That's the majority of people these days. And I'm talking people who are highly educated, run businesses or executives in companies. It does not matter if you make 40,000 a year or 400,000 a year. This pattern is systemic all the way through our culture these days.
And so the particular pattern you're talking about is not having the insulation or the financial foundation to pivot, the patterns that create the lack of that. Tell me what you think
or can I say,
please.
It's about having a safety container that gives you the emotional grounded feeling that it's okay to pivot. So most people don't love themselves enough to put that amount of money in a savings account to have themselves feel emotionally comfortable. Most people don't do that. They use debt structures for that.
I would agree with you, because I don't know how many people equate loving myself with with preparing a financial foundation, right?
Exactly. Right. Because most of us were raised in, like, help others, do others, and it's always outside of yourself. And it's like, this is not just about others and what you're doing out in the world. It's also about self-loving yourself and taking care of self. And I'm not saying be selfish, but I'm constantly always talking about the fact that this isn't an either or, it's an and. Love myself more than anything else in the whole wide world and do good in the world, whether it's being a great employer or a great boss or a great spouse, right? But it can't come at your cost. And so many of us, financially speaking, comes at the cost of all the interest you're paying out there. People will tell me all the time, going, well, but I have a mortgage at 3.1%. And why would I pay that down? And why would I do this? I'm going, because you don't feel like you can quit the job that's creating disease in your body because you don't really actually like your job and you've got this huge mortgage that you're trying to pay off. That's why
Yeah.
you pay off the mortgage. And that's where you find the balance between the emotional and the financial.
It's interesting that you're talking about a similar dynamic that I see just in the lives of the clients that I have, humans who are socialized as women who are stuck in people pleasing. Because
Yep.
when they come and talk to me, what they say is, the way I have been taught to act in the world is that everybody else is up here, their wants and their needs, and I'm down here.
Right.
And that is what I have been taught. But Sarah, when I hear you talking about not people pleasing anymore, what I imagine is this kind of flip where now my needs are the most important in the room. And I am viewed as the selfish, bossy, self-centered bitch who cares about herself more than anything else. And that's terrifying for humans who've been socialized as women, because the worst thing you can be called is somebody who's not nice and a bitch, right?
Right.
But what I explain to them is, no, what I'm talking about is this, where we are equal and your matters, your needs and wants matter to me. And I
Correct.
try to see to them and attend to them and honor them at the same time that I matter, my needs, my wants.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing that I hear you talking about
Right.
in this creation of a financial foundation.
And I would say one step further is that when it's like this is their fear responding, their unresolved trauma or rejection from before they were 7 years old, that thinks that everyone's going to think something of them or think that something's not right. And so we have to watch the stories that we tell ourselves in our heads, because it's the stories that we tell ourselves that actually then creates that reality. Because if those are the words coming out of your mouth, that that's your fear, that that's how people are going to perceive you, or the stories you're telling yourself that this is how they're going to see you, well, then those stories and those words are actually then what creates that reality. And when we realize we're that powerful and you flip it and you go, oh, like I want to redirect my brain. I want to redirect the words coming out of my mouth. Because sometimes when I was healing from my people pleasing, I'd watch the words coming out of my mouth and I'd be like, and then when I shut my mouth, it was amazing how I could feel the unrest in my own body. And all you need to do is feel those feelings of fear and feel those feelings of whatever it is that's coming up. And then you get to the other side. And
it makes a lot of, sorry, go ahead. You first.
No, it's just fascinating. That's what I was going to say. Like when we realize we're that powerful and that the solution is that simple. And I'm not saying it's simple to close your mouth and not people please. That was not an easy task for me to get to the other side of, because I was a people pleaser and a fix it, right? I'm the second oldest of 12 children. And I fell in line very good, like a nice little Catholic girl, right? Did what everybody expected me to do. I was the nice arm candy, keep your mouth shut and just keep your pretty face there, right? And it's like, once I started to have a voice, it was just like, you're upsetting the apple cart. And it's like going, ooh. And then, and here, money is my work in the world, on top of then like me even dating men and me having more financial power than they do. Oh, that's a whole other different podcast, right? It's like when you really own it and going, oh, I need somebody to be my match, not somebody I drag along.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And not people please them to keep them in my life because they love me, but they love my money too. Like that's a real deal.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating, but it really does boil down to self-love and then holding healthy boundaries for self.
So when you make the decision that loving yourself includes creating a financial foundation for yourself that would make any pivot feel safe and doable, where would someone start if they're just at the very beginning of, okay, I buy that idea. I like that idea. That sounds good to me. It feels good in my body. I can see the stories that I tell that put everybody else above me, their needs and their wants, and I don't want to do that anymore. What do I do first?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is understand that any way that you design this that makes you feel grounded and comfortable and does not hijack your nervous system is the right answer. And the right answer is not necessarily what you read in a smart financial book, because there are two sides to every human. It's your right brain and your left brain. And your left brain is going to say, well, I read in this really good financial book that this is what the right person does to create this insulation. And all those things are true. But the problem is you're forgetting half of yourself. You're forgetting your right brain. So that's why at my company, JMC Wealth Management, we actually analyze both sides of a person's brain to say, this is what your right brain's saying, this is what your left brain's saying, and this is why you have the disconnect. Because we're not listening to our right brains is the challenge. And your right brain can be measured. You don't have to necessarily do my questionnaires to find that out. Really, all you have to do is if you're thinking about, okay, how do I insulate myself? And let's just say from an emergency reserve perspective, let's give an example. And you spend, let's say it's $5,000 a month. That's your expenses per month. And any financial book you pick up is going to tell you, well, 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a savings account is the right way to do it. Okay, well, and you're sitting here going, but. So let's say you get some anxiety about like only, 3 months in reserve, so $30,000 in reserve. Your body, which is connected with your right brain, the emotional brain, is sitting there telling you, you've not insulated enough at $30,000 that you need a little bit more padding and a little bit more grounding just so that you can be neutral in your nervous system. And so I'll throw numbers out to people going, what if it was 40? What if it was 50? And I have them test. I have 50,000 in reserve. I have 50,000 in reserve. And if they say that over and over again, I want them to pay attention to how their body feels. Because if you feel grounded and calm, that's the right answer. If it's still giving you anxiety and you're going, well, I don't know, and you're bringing it up, then you're not grounded. Then that's not the right number. So the first rule of thumb is get 3 to 6 months at least, right? But then figure out what your real number is. Now you might be somebody who needs 2 months and you're like, $30,000 is absolutely ridiculous because you want to make more interest on your money and you want to start moving it over to bonds and stocks and make more money. Okay, fine. But your body is actually going to physically tell you that answer. And if you can trust your body intelligence that that is the perfect thing in right alignment for you, that's the best muscle you can build. No matter how many smart financial books are out there, your body is giving you the answers all the time. You just don't listen.
Yeah.
Most of us don't listen because we've been trained these highly educated brains in this good educational system, and we pull it all up and we evaluate it out. And the problem is we forgot to take our heart and soul along with for the ride. That's the problem. But if you're paying attention to how your body responds or reacts to things, it's going to give you the answer whether it's in alignment or not.
I love that. 100%. Amen. And that's hard. That's hard for humans who are socialized as women because what we have been taught our entire lives is that external focus. What does he want? What does she want? What does she think? What does he think? How can I, please? And is getting in there and kind of gumming up the process of turning that external focus inward.
Right.
And my guess is that it is even a little tougher around money in some ways because money is this physical manifestation of so many things, and we just have so much meaning around what money is. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know what? It's about learning to trust yourself over trusting things outside of yourself. So you're building that trust muscle, right? And going, wow, why have we not been taught right from our younger years of trusting your own gut over and above everything and anything else? And it's about the integration of your heart and your head, where our whole system is set up. So when it's trusting something externally outside of yourself, that's actually the masculine part of ourselves. It's not the feminine. It's not the magic of the divine feminine. Divine feminine is the heart, the soul. And that is the piece that's building that trust muscle from within. And that's why the subtitle of my first book is Building Wealth from the Inside Out, because it is building that trust muscle going, you know what? I feel really anxious about this and I need to address that and I need to find the right place for me. And There's plenty of versions that will come out in the world to test you the minute you choose you. You will, because it'll test every ounce of what you have to go back into your old patterning. Or are you going to feel through those feelings that are coming up, whether it's fear, anxiety, sadness, whatever it is? You just got to feel the feelings, and then that builds the trust muscle. That's how you get to the other side of it. Like, I remember when I was first building that muscle, not people pleasing my ex-husband. Now, mind you, this was me having lawsuit after lawsuit filed against me and auditors of my company and everything. He hired everyone under the sun to just come at me. And I remember when I stopped people pleasing and I was just like, nope, not doing it. I literally was like this, like I was ready for the guns to come at me. And really, I just had to feel those feelings of stepping into my power and going, oh my God, here we go. And that's what got me to the other side. And when we realize that you can do this and build that inside, it's not easy, but again, it goes back to loving yourself more than anything else. And you deserve that, because this lesson is not going to stop. It's going to keep coming the rest of your life. And you're going to keep getting different people, different faces, different names, similar situations, but the same stuff until you step into your power. That's what's going to happen.
It's interesting. It's like endlessly interesting to me that what it all comes down to is you're used to feeling this type of discomfort.
Right.
The discomfort of using debt, the discomfort of looking outside of you for approval and validation, the discomfort of responding to everybody else's expectations of you, kind of on this endless, exhausting loop. We're used to that. And
Right.
so at the heart of what you and I both do is you just have to feel a different kind of uncomfortable that you're not used to yet. And that creates a new feedback loop of I feel, I process, and then I trust myself. I feel it, I process it, I'm with it in a loving, compassionate way, and I trust. Versus on the old endless loop of I just have to constantly be watching for what other people want from me and doing that.
Correct. And by building that trust muscle, that's the only way you get to sustainable happiness.
Yeah.
It's the only way, because I categorize people financially as the poor, debtors, dreamers, accumulators, and rich but empty. Because everyone who is poor, debtor, dreamer, or accumulator thinks that once I have a couple $1,000,000, then it's all going to be okay. And I will tell you, I have those clients that have those multi-millions and they're rich but empty. So no matter what your financial status is, you can embody what I call in my second book, Awaken Your Wealth. I talk about embodying real wealth, because the embodiment of real wealth can happen no matter what your financial situation currently is, but you're choosing to be sustainably happy regardless of your external financial condition. Because you're choosing the things that are in alignment with self, and that's the only things that actually create sustainable happiness in your life. Because otherwise, everything else is built on stilts, and you're creating financial leaky containers all over the place. And somebody just has to take a pen and pop your bubble, and then it's going out in a divorce. It's going out in a job layoff. It's going out in the economy turning, because you've built it on stilts. You've not built it on that trust muscle of loving yourself above everything and anything else.
So embodying real wealth. I think I can identify with myself and people that I know and have worked with that there very much is that idea that once I have this amount in my bank account, or once I have this thing, then I will get to feel a certain way. But as you talk about, that just makes you the rich but empty, because you still don't have this ability to embody real wealth. What does that look like to embody real wealth?
Embodying real wealth is really about surrendering into self, meaning being authentically you in every decision, whether it's in your career, financially, your family life. Like a big part, you don't plug into the world as a people pleaser only in your family, and then you don't do it at work and you don't do it with your kids. You do it everywhere. And so when you start to actually take your power back and live life from a place of personal empowerment, all of a sudden it shifts in every direction. Like, I remember when I really took this big step in personal empowerment when I left my husband and decided to get divorced, all those clients that, I was people pleasing, they all left my firm. I had a couple employees, they left my firm. And it was like, because when I stopped putting up with that pattern in one area of my life, clients left, friends left, employees left, like, because I was no longer willing to do that pattern any longer. And
Yeah.
so that embodiment of real wealth is really living from a place of empowerment and saying, this is what's true for me. I need to live authentically, and it's okay that I disappoint everybody else in the process.
Oh, that disappointing everybody else in the process. I have a lot of personal experience with that. Having left the religious organization that my parents raised me in, I gave everything to it. And in the way that, I mean, just the easiest, clearest way for me to say that is, yeah, I disappointed like 500 people all at once,
Yeah.
which is so interesting to do, and how terrifying that was for me to do, and how it actually kept me from doing it for a really long time. So what are some scenarios in which you see your clients learning to disappoint people in a financial setting, or looking through a financial lens?
Well, so one is like, are you people pleasing? I see it with parents a lot with their kids. That their kids like, well, I want to provide better for them for the next generation and see if things are working out better. But the problem is that these turn into 27-year-old beasts who don't stop charging on their parents' credit card. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a very common one for those of us who are parents. It could also be that you might be the child who's the only one that shows up for mom and dad as they're aging. That's another common one, and siblings don't. Right. And you're like, you're bailing everybody else out because you're being the good girl, right? Or the good boy, right? And want that pat on the back, attaboy, right? And I always challenge people in these situations. I'm like, well, at the end of the day, it's all about how you feel. Like in your parent situation, I ask my clients all the time, when your mom and dad die, have you done everything in alignment with yourself and how you want to show? Because it has nothing to do with your siblings. It has to do with the fact that mom and dad die. How do you feel? And did you show up the way you wanted to show up, regardless of everybody else? Because I found that's the only place that, again, that's how you become grounded, that when they pass, you're not having these meltdowns after they're gone because you showed up in alignment with self and you didn't make it about anybody else, right? And that answer is different for different people. And so we see this, place where people, it's choosing to not enable others. Like there's that enabling piece. It's choosing, like, for an example, I'm a huge giver. I have 11 brothers and sisters. I have 40 nieces and nephews. There's somebody that always needs financial help. And I'm the most financially successful one in my family, but I have a savings account that I have set up that I put money in on a monthly basis. That's called the Murphy Relief Fund. And the reason I've set that up is because I have all my goals and dreams set up for these other areas. And I've decided that the amount that I put in that bucket per month still allows me to do the most self-loving things for myself, as well as still be a giver and help my family. So when somebody calls me up, whatever the balance is in that savings account, that's the amount I'm willing to help somebody. Because then I'm still accomplishing all my goals on top of that. Those are ways how I see, like, so I'm still helping, but I used to enable. I used to people please. I used to do it at my cost. Be like, oh, this is really hard, but yeah, I'll figure it out. But why do I have to figure it out? Like sometimes tough love is the best way. Like let your children or your family members fall on their face financially, because then they're going to learn how to build their own muscles to make different decisions. And that's how you can even love them even more. And not that if people are in hard times, you don't help them. I get that. But in the same token, tough love comes in handy, because then people learn to fish for themselves as opposed to you fishing for them.
That's
Not
such an
easy.
interest. It's so true. and it's such as I'm thinking about like the women who typically listen to this podcast and the clients I work with, one of kind of the central features of people pleasing is powerlessness and feeling like you don't have either the right or the authority to change things. And so much of life when you're stuck in people pleasing just feels like it happens to you, and you don't have a lot of say in it. And there's all of these things that just happen, and you have to adjust and accommodate and go along. And one of the things that I hear you saying is that one of the most powerful things that you can do is just make decisions about what you want your financial life to look like. Like you established the Murphy Relief Fund, right? The giving and helping fund. And in making that a separate account and putting money into it, you put some structure around how this will happen in my life. And when people come to me and need help, this is what is available. That seems simple, but I can also see how it is revolutionary for a lot of women who are used to kind of just being taken along, and not participating as active decision makers in their financial life. And so one of the things the reason I wanted to point that out is because it is powerful to just make a decision. I will be doing this, or I won't be doing it. I will be doing it to the tune of this amount of money. And that is often like making that decision could be, I think, a place to pick up some power and authority that we just haven't done before.
And it's so simple. It's so simple. It's like, in essence, like paying yourself before you pay anybody else. And most of us don't pay ourselves first.
So true.
Like I literally established over the last few weeks, I established an account that said Julie's Money. Because I'm like going, I have all this money going out to my ex-husband, to my kids, to my stepkids, to my boyfriend, to my parents. My mom passed early this year. And it's like all this money's going out. And I'm going, so 10% of any income I get goes into this bucket. It's Julie's money, and I ain't giving it to anybody. It's mine.
Yeah.
It's mine. And it's because I just feel like I need my own to not, and it's because I'm a huge giver. I'm an enormous giver. So even me, 30 years of being a financial planner, I'm still putting those boundaries and the construction to things that keep me out of my patterning of where I can naturally default to being a people pleaser. And I'm like going, no, been down that rodeo. I'm not doing that again. So what structure do I need? And then I create the structure, and now I have Julie's money.
Yeah.
And nobody gets access to it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you don't.
It's so interesting because it is so simple. But to be able to do that, we have to recognize that our programming has made us very used to making do, taking the leftovers of time, leftovers of energy.
Figure it out, right?
Yeah, I'll always figure it out. And it's so interesting because I think that there are women who look at that figure out muscle that they've so well developed as something honorable, something like I'm the person who figures out how to make do with the leftovers, as if that is a badge of honor. And I'm looking straight at myself because I think that kind of tenacity is something that I have admired in myself, when really it is a direct product of this programming where I get what is left over.
Right. And when you start to realize going, oh, I don't really want the leftovers. I'd like to give my leftovers to somebody else. Like, because that, again, it all goes back to self-love, that you have to put the love that you have for yourself in front of everything and anything else. But particularly women, we've been taught to not do that. Like you were not a good girl if you didn't do that. And many people will try to screw with you, especially if they're narcissists. They will say,
yes,
you're so selfish. And I'm like going, I am. Thanks. Like I just laugh as opposed to going, oh my God, am I? And did I not do the right thing? And like my younger version would have done. Right. And now when somebody calls me selfish, I like giggle because I'm like going, all right, I'm empowered. Got it. Because I know there's not one ounce of me that's selfish. I have a Murphy Relief Fund. I have all this other stuff that I do for other people, and going, I could cut a lot of people off and be retired this year.
Yeah.
But I'm not, because I'm doing my work and I love giving to people. But I'm doing it as an and conversation, not an either or conversation.
So much of what you're talking about is fascinating to me because it deals just directly with how women have been taught to think about money in particular. And one of my favorite exercises is to take something that is said to a woman and flip it and say, how would this idea be expressed to a man? Because that is a really good way of exposing how the rules are different because the programming is different. And so if someone is telling you, Julie, you are so selfish with your money, how would a man have that same idea communicated to him? I think people would say he's such a smart investor.
Oh,
right.
Right.
He is
Well,
yeah.
Well, and the person saying that is just manipulating you to become your people pleaser.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the test. That when somebody's doing that, they're just a manipulator and they're trying to get you to turn into your patterning and be a people pleaser and give them what they want.
For sure, they are going to benefit from that, and they know that.
Right.
And I also think it's interesting, and just in terms of programming, and important to name that women get a different set of rules around money than I think men do. And just to say, because I think it's true, patriarchy is equally hard on men around money. It's one of the only ways they can show value and success.
Right.
And
being a provider.
Yeah. But I think women, what we're taught is it's gross to talk about money, or it's unseemly, it's vain to talk about yourself as a powerful person who is asset rich and income rich. And so what are your thoughts about the difference in that programming, and how do you look at that?
So I believe that every human has their masculine side as well as their feminine side. Women or men, they have masculine and feminine. So when you were saying all that, I'm going, there are much more men that are in their masculine energy than their feminine. But I know some financial planners are men who operate more from the relationship and feminine side of self, their heart, versus the numbers in their mind. And I think those guys are the ones that were always made fun of in the patriarchy as well. Like, I think they got pulverized, similarly to women for being more feminine in nature and in their heart, as opposed to in their heads and like competitive and drive and go knock them down, right? I definitely think there's two different rules. I mean, I watched that, even in my own household that I grew up in, and I am by far my dad's favorite, but my dad couldn't figure out why, if his daughter could get into Notre Dame, he didn't understand what was wrong with his 8 sons, that they couldn't do what their sister did. And it was like they were less than because of that. Like that was like a added patriarchy pressure, but it was what's going on in my dad's psyche in that generation, as opposed to like something that was flawed with any of my brothers. It was just that I was just being myself and they were being themselves.
Yeah.
And I believe that was to teach my dad some lessons, that women could do things and boys are not less than if they didn't. Right? Like when we realize that those that we call into our lives are just the players of the game for you to evolve into the highest version of yourself, and we can start to see that, going, so I give gratitude every day to my ex-husband, who's really, if you looked at it on paper, just financially annihilated me. It's been over $1 million in court fees over a 9-year process. But he's my biggest teacher. And it was all about me stepping into my empowerment. It was all about me being the best version of myself. And the thing is, that's now subsiding because I'm now fully in my power. It's interesting on how I believe our souls call these players in, whether it's I've called in a lot of patriarch energy from my father to my ex-husband to everyone, for me to step into the work that I'm meant to do in this lifetime. And when we realize that we can see and have gratitude for those components, as hard as it's been, I definitely was not there 6 years ago, right? I was more in going, he did this, he did that. And then it was more like going, there's two players in the game. And I wasn't in my power. And that's how I played in the game. because I didn't choose from a place of being the divine feminine leader in my relationship. Right. And so I do think that there's different rules of the ball game, but there's different rules also on some level because we've allowed there to be different rules as women. I don't think it's all the patriarchy problem. It's if we were stepping in our power fully, that wouldn't have been tolerated. It wouldn't have happened on some level, I believe. And maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but I know that we should love ourselves enough to step into our power and we'll see where it shakes out. Right. But it is our time to be more equal. I mean, I always say to my female clients, I'm like going, you're not paid as much as your male counterpart because you don't love yourself enough to walk in there going, I'm going to quit if you don't pay me this. Women don't walk into their boss and say that. Men do all the time. All the time. So until we start to plug in from this place of confidence and knowing that we're worth that and we don't need to negotiate ourselves away, we're never going to be paid the same because we don't love ourselves enough to walk if they don't pay us.
And in order to feel comfortable walking, you have to have the financial assets and foundation to be able to do that.
Right.
Because
and that's your foundation, your empowerment. Right.
Yes. I don't want someone to hear that they, in order for women to be treated the same as men, we have to take financial risks that we are not comfortable taking or shouldn't be taking because of the way that our financial needs have been set up. We need to live in a house. We need to be able to have food and take care of the people that we need to take care of.
But it could be that what you do is you walk in there and you do your best job possible to say, this is what I feel I deserve this. And when they don't step up to the plate and pay you that, then you start strategizing how you're getting the hell out of there.
Exactly. It's not the end of the conversation.
In their face.
Yeah.
You could just hold the space and go, okay, I see how I'm valued and I'd like to manifest somewhere where I am valued. So I'm going to work on the bridge to getting somewhere else because I'm not going to put up with that.
That is what I think is so important and valuable. And that goes for any kind of relationship you are in that currently is not allowing you to show up and be who you are, to make space where your needs and wants matters, whether it's a work relationship, a romantic relationship, and to get that data back from people, to ask for what you want and to have them tell you no. I imagine that dynamic was a part of why you left your marriage, right? You wanted things to look and be a certain way. You wanted to feel a certain way. And your ex-husband was either unwilling or unable to do that. And so you made plans to go get what you wanted. And part of having the option to do that has to do with providing a financial foundation that is based in, I love myself enough to prepare to be able to make the change that I want so that my life reflects what I want it to reflect.
Well, and I will say that I've had a lot of women say to me going, oh, well, your situation's different because you were the one that made more of the money. And I was like, valid point. That is true in many marriages. But to your point, you can prepare and you can educate yourself and understand what that bridge looks like to hold those healthy boundaries. Like I've had many women call me like 2 years before they actually get divorced to help them build that muscle to get the preparation and be on that bridge. Even if they're not the one that has the financial power in the relationship at that moment. Because just because you're not the one bringing in the majority of the cash does not necessarily mean that you can't walk across that bridge and still position yourself to create a wonderful life for yourself.
I really love that metaphor of the bridge. I feel like that is so, it's really an apt metaphor because a bridge doesn't fall from the sky, right? It doesn't appear, it has to be built. And it has to be built by the person who wants to use it and cross it.
Exactly. And you get to choose how solid that bridge is or how rickety it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's your choice.
Yeah.
And when you realize what kind of bridge are you building, and some people might be fine with, a bridge like Indiana Jones on ropes. You might be fine with that. Okay. But you might want the Golden Gate, nice and solid.
Right.
Right? Like, but again, it's about allowing yourself to be in process. It's about allowing yourself to walk one step at a time with not really knowing where the next step is. Right. Yeah. But loving yourself enough so, okay, I'll figure it out. And
connected to that trust that that says, I'll figure it out.
Yep, exactly.
As we kind of prepare to wrap up here, is there anything else in your work that feels really relevant to add to this conversation? I had one other question about your program Pact that you use. I would love to hear a little bit about that and how that kind of figures into what we're talking about. But then I also just want you to keep in mind if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I created this PACT system years ago. It's a PACT, and it's just about the fact that all of your decisions financially need to start with what it is that you want to create in your life. So picturing the life that you want to create, not only financially, but in your family life, your personal life, your career, everything. And I have free worksheets and stuff like that on my website that people can go download to work them through exercise and stuff. But when you don't have what it is that you want to create as your foundation, that is your compelling reason for change. So it's the most important step of the process. And the second step is that I need you to really accept the reality that you've created thus far, because you are the creator of your life. And in that acceptance of what you've already created, what you're doing is you're creating emotional space for the new to come in. Because you might grieve in that acceptance process. You might let go of attachments that you have that open you up to the new process. And while you're accepting that reality, I also need you to wake up more to your authentic self, because you have unique gifts in the world to share. And most of the time when we're people pleasing or fixing it for others, we're not being authentic. And so it's like, we got to wake up that little girl, little boy inside and say, okay, who am I and what am I all about? The third step of the process is really choosing to change. It's like choosing to walk across a bridge, choosing to find the courage to take the next right step in the direction of what I desire my life to be from this point forward. And then the last step of the process is the step that every financial planner takes, and it's taking action. I just feel like there's these 3 steps before that, because if you're not taking into account picturing the life you want to create, accept the reality you've created, wake your authentic self back up and choose to change, and you're just putting these financial products and stuff in place because that's what the person in the cubicle next to you did, well, it's not, it's built on stilts. So the action that you take in this last step of the process is actually about only take those steps if they support the P in the process of PACT. Otherwise, because money is energy, and you want to energize what you want to create more of in your life. And if you want to create more debt, well, then have all your money just go to paying off debt, because that's just going to keep you in debt structures. You have to start to pivot and do little things differently to plant seeds in other directions while you're cleaning up your financial past, which are your debts. You have to do them simultaneously. And I really think I always say this phrase that it's time to let your freak flag fly and be exactly who you are. And you should not apologize for it whatsoever. That's the biggest message I want people to hear, that you were made with these unique gifts to bring to this world. And it's time to be you in every ounce of you, because the world needs you now.
I love that. And I think that I have had the thought, once I get to a certain amount of money, then I can do that. Then I can.
No, you got to do it now.
That's what I hear you saying.
Because it's like, I'll get there once I have all this money. Guess what? It's not going to be there. And then you're going to be like rich but empty, like my other clients.
Yeah.
Got to do it now. Now.
One of the things that you said in one of our previous conversations, you asked the question, what is the most self-loving thing I can do now?
Mm-hmm.
I love that question. I love it in regard to the question, or the way you just laid out PACT, because you're going to picture the life you want, accept the reality you've created thus far, choose to change, and then take some action. And what is the most self-loving thing I can do first? I think for me, I'm easily overwhelmed, right? I think kind of the last place I have personally done a lot of this people-pleasing work is with money. And so when I narrow down on, okay, what is the first thing I can do? I love that the framing that you offered of that question, what is the most self-loving thing I can do right now? And for me, actually, the answer would be just to get clear on where my money is and what it is doing right now. Because as I have thought about my own relationship to money, there's some mystery there about where it is and what it's doing, because I have deferred so many of these financial decisions to my husband. And I wanted to offer that to listeners because it was something that you and I talked about before. And it makes it really easy. Like, it's okay. It's okay that I deferred those decisions. It's okay that
There's
I
no right or wrong. It just is.
that I didn't feel smart enough before. What I can do is in that first, act of self-love is just to get clear. And so what are some other things? What are some other options for women who might not be, further along the line into actually creating assets and creating income that they want? What are some of these first self-loving steps that you see your clients take? Like the one I just said I'm going to take.
So like I just coached a client today and they were talking about, should we sell our place and sell this piece of land and blah, blah. And I said, which one makes you giggle the most? And that's when it's an alignment in the most self-loving thing. It's because it puts a smile on your face. It makes you giggle. And that is an easy solution. People go, well, but is that fiscally smart? I'm like, it's smart if it's in alignment with you. Yeah. And it's in alignment with you if it makes you giggle. And it's so simple, but it's so in alignment. And then people will pull it up to their brains and they'll go, but. I don't care. That made you feel the lightest. It made you giggle. And I'm like, can you see how that just smile on your face as you said that? This is why you have to follow. That's building that trust muscle in self, right? And so that's the first thing is follow your giggle because that is it. And as you look at your financials, when you go to judge it or when you have that shame or guilt come up, I need you to forgive yourself because you did the best you could at that moment in time. I remember my divorce process. There was this point where there was all these debts that were accumulating. I'm not a person that likes debt. And it was because I had lawsuits coming at me, forensic auditors, all these other things. And I was just like, it was like $100,000 in debt. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And so I opted to actually liquidate my kids' college funds to pay that all off because I just didn't want the stress of it anymore. I'm like, I'm going to manifest my kids' college funds anyway. And right now in this moment, and I could have triggered all the guilt and judgment and all the other stuff that goes around with that, not being good enough and all that other not worthy. But I just was like, I loved myself enough to take away and just go, it's all right. It's still going to be good. And it has been. And their college funds are built back up again. Yeah. 8 years later, it's fine. But in that moment in time. So just know you're always doing the best you can at the level of awareness that you have at that moment in time. And all of it is okay. Because the only reason it becomes something is because you make it something. And when you start to become aware that whatever storyline you tell yourself in that brain of yours is your reality and you're making it something, well, make it something you want, making something you giggle about. Why not?
I love that.
Even if you create a savings account that says my giggle account. Or I had one client call it their piss away fund because they never pissed away money ever. They were very structured, very organized. And I go, I want you to create a savings account that's called your piss away fund. And they're like, what? Like, what financial planner tells me to piss my money away? I go, one that wants you to actually live in your life and not be so afraid that the bottom's always going to fall out, that you're actually going to go on these vacations that you've always dreamed of. Yeah. And she did. And she tells everybody, I can't believe my financial planner made me set up an account that's called my piss away fund. and it makes her laugh every time she says it. Yeah. Every time. Right?
I'm so grateful that you have been here to share this. Obviously, in the show notes, we're going to have your website, and I hope people go and have a really great time figuring out how you can be of help to them. Is there anything that, as we wrap up, you just want to make sure that you say?
Create a support system for yourself. Whether it's through Sarah or my website, these are all women coming together to support from our personal experiences to lead women to a place of empowerment. So whatever gives you that support that you need until you build that muscle yourself, come join us because we're here to help.
Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.
Hey, thanks for listening. If this podcast has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a 5-star rating in whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And if you go to my website, sarahfisk.coach, you can sign up there to receive my emails. Right now, I'm taking private one-to-one clients who want my help speeding up this work in their own lives. I really hope to provide a lot of free information on my website and in my podcast for people to do this work on their own. But if you're interested in having a coach like me to help you implement these things faster, to find the blind spots and obstacles that you're not aware of, go to my website and sign up for a consult. That's a time when you and I can get on Zoom and talk about the particulars of your situation, and I can show you how I could be helpful. The second thing you can do on my website is sign up for a freebie that I have called Difficult Conversations. Having a conversation that seems like it's going to be hard or difficult is one of the things that people pleasers struggle with. And so I've created a whole guide for you to be able to do that with some more confidence. That will also get you signed up for information about my group program, Stop People Pleasing. It's a group coaching program where you join a community of women just like you who are struggling to overcome perfectionating and people pleasing, and we do it together in a group. It's a really amazing opportunity to not just learn from your own experience, but just to see how similar you are to so many other women out there. The healing and the challenging and the laughing and the growth that happens in that beautiful community of women is really amazing. And if it's interesting to you, I would love for you to know about it.